Hi there. I'm going to talk about Plato's Symposium, which you all read for Module 2 in Philosophy of Beauty. The Symposium is definitely my favorite of Plato's dialogues. It is one of the most popular, most famous of all his dialogues. It is a different look from the Republic, which you had a look at last week. Symposium is written. I'm not sure where it falls within, within the timeline of Plato's work, whether it's an early work or a later work. I don't think it's an early work. I do believe it's a later work. What's interesting about the Symposium is that it has, it's more than a dialogue, of course. I've been referring to Plato's dialogues, but really you did not look at any dialogues in this class. The vast majority of Plato's works are dialogues, meaning that they are conversations between Socrates and another person. That's the case in the Euthyphro, where he's talking to someone named Euthyphro. That's the case in Meno, again, where he speaks to someone named Meno, the Credo, etc. The Republic and the Symposium are more than dialogues. Of course, these are conversations between Socrates and a couple of people. Actually, Symposium is not really, it's even a more peculiar dialogue because it's a collection of speeches, or encomia. An encomium is a speech in praise of something. Encomia is the plural. Symposium in Greek means a drinking together. This is a party. It's actually, I think, Plato's funniest dialogue as well. I hope you found it enjoyable, even humorous. It's also very curious the way it opens here with someone recounting a story that he had heard from someone else about a party where everybody was drunk. So it is very curious to to understand the significance of that. We saw in the Republic that Plato is very critical of art because it is imitation of reality. And here we are getting a story of a story of a story, which is, it's highly unlikely that it is being relayed to us with exactitude or faithfulness. It's a party at the house of the playwright, whose name is escaping me for a second, Agathon. He has won an award and he is throwing a party, and apparently the men had been drunk the night before. The figures are, just as with all the other characters in Plato's dialogues, these are people that actually lived in Athens at his time. He may have known them or not. Aristophanes is a central figure in the Symposium, and that's interesting because he is the celebrated comic playwright of Athens, and he wrote some pretty bawdy stuff. He wrote a famous play which was redone or repurposed by Spike Lee, I believe, years ago, about the gangs in Chicago. The play that Aristophanes does, whose name escapes me, I think it's the Bacchae, is about how the women of Athens go on strike to stop their men from going to war. And when I mean strike, I mean that they refuse to have sex with them. One of the more remarkable plays of Aristophanes is his Clouds, where he issues a searing parody of Socrates. Socrates is a buffoon and a blowhard, and he is just babbling nonsense and masturbating, and it's really really a nasty portrayal of him. So it's really kind of surprising that Aristophanes shows up here. But let me talk more broadly about I'm going to talk about a couple of the speeches, and of course I have to say the most about the speech of Socrates and Alcibiades at the very end. These men decide that they are going to offer toasts to love, the god of love. And some of the more remarkable speeches are the speech of Phaedrus, which comes early. Maybe that's the first one, if my notes serve me correctly. And he praises love for its moral and political significance, and suggests that it would be, that it is, love is or would be the ideal social and political bond. And he makes it sound like love is the ideal relationship in the city. And he talks about how an army of lovers, of an army of men going off to battle who are in love with each other. I'll talk about that in a second. I realized I forgot to talk about that aspect of this dialogue. But he argues that an army of lovers would be a formidable army because they could not bear, because, they would want to put on a good show for their lover. I realized I should have mentioned this beforehand. The love that these men are talking about is principally the love, actually almost exclusively the love between a man and a boy. I will not pretend to be an expert on this subject, although I've had to read about it plenty in order to teach the symposium. And here is what I understand. These men, I don't think they would have called themselves homosexuals in the way we understand it today, because they were not exclusively gay. They also obviously saw nothing wrong with same-sex relationships. These men all were married to women, and they would have had children with their wives, but they would have had affairs, I guess is the word for it, or romantic relationships with boys. And the relationship that the prevalent and traditional relationship these men are talking about in Athens at the time it's kind of like an intellectual apprenticeship of a prepubescent boy with an older man. And what's interesting to understand is that this relationship is not reciprocal, and it is not equal. The best way to explain this is that in the Greek translation of these partners is that you would have a lover and a beloved. And the boy would have been the beloved and the object of affection, which the lover, the older man, would woo. And the lover, in order to woo the younger man, puts on a display of virtue, speech, and the like, in order to attract the younger boy and impress the younger boy. And that's what Phaedrus has in mind here when he's talking about, these men marching off to battle, an army of lovers. The lovers will put on a good display in order to impress their beloved. So this is his suggestion. This is his praise of love. And of course, as is always the case with Socrates, on one hand, and we saw this if you'd read all of his recommendations in the Republic, you would see that a recurring pattern with Plato is that at first his proposal kind of makes a little bit of sense. I can understand how, you might be inclined to say that, yes, the ideal social and political bond would be love. And yes, an army of lovers would certainly fight valiantly for one another. But, this also sounds preposterous. And, we could think about the ways in which it makes a little sense. For example, one thing to understand is that they are speaking about romantic love, which is not, and this is where I need to also distinguish between different types of love. In English, we don't really discriminate. We use the word love to refer to a variety of relationships, but the Greeks understood different types of love. There was philia, F-I-L-I-A. Philia is the love between family members. Then there's eros, and eros is the love between romantic partners. And that may be sexual love, sexual infatuation. And by the way, I just realized I didn't address this issue when it comes to the man-boy relationship, whether sex is involved. This is a subject of debate among scholars. Many, I think, do not believe it actually had a sexual aspect, but I am ultimately will plead ignorance on that. I think there's plenty of evidence here that in this play, in this symposium, that there is a good degree of passion in this relationship, and which does hint towards a sexual element. In any case, the different types of love. You have philia, which is love of friends or family. I'm sorry. We have the city of Philadelphia in America, the city of brotherly love. So philia has been translated as brotherly love. Family love is fine. Eros is romantic love, and then there's also storge, which is the love of parents for children, and then there is agape, which the Christians took over and repurposed, and seems to refer to an altruistic love, a communal love. I'm not really going to talk about agape today. But the point is that they are talking about romantic love as eros, as being the relationship, the proper relationship. Sorry, Phaedrus is talking about the eros as the proper relationship between people in a city and an army. And that's preposterous when you start to think about how combustible erotic relationships can be. Romance, that is, as Freud points out in Civilization's Discontents, romantic love is precisely not the proper foundation for a community, because lovers tend to want to pair off and be isolated, and they don't want to expand their bonds. And generally speaking, romance can also be combustible. I mentioned that a second ago, because, well, lovers fight, and sometimes they fight quite violently. As again, Freud is going to point out in his work that love and hate are, as he puts it, plastic. They can flow into one another. And anybody who has been in love knows that, that it can transition quite quickly to serious anger against your partner, and which is and don't forget also that we see domestic violence as one of the more common aspects of murder, in this country. This is not to say that this necessarily happens from romance. Of course it doesn't, but it just points out that romance is a special kind of relationship that is not necessarily a good idea as the foundation of a city or an army, for that matter. I'm going to talk now about Aristophanes' speech, which is my favorite speech. It is absolutely wonderful, where he talks about the origins of humans. It's a very stirring, very moving speech. I find it tremendously profound. I've written an article about it a few years ago, and what it means for romantic love. Happy to share it with the class if anybody's interested. Where he talks about, in the beginning, humans were hermaphrodites, and then they, in a story, in a plot line that is reminiscent from the Bible and the Tower of Babel, Zeus believes humans are too strong, and in order to take them down a notch, he slices them in half. And these humans are, they're two halves of a whole, and they run to each other, and they try to grab each other and bond again. And I think Apollo says to Zeus, have pity on them, and Zeus says, sure. So he says, I'll give them some satisfaction. He turns their head around. Apparently their heads weren't even facing each other. And, oh, sorry, I skipped the part at the very beginning. They're more than just hermaphrodites. They have 8 limbs and 2 faces. They are, they are grotesque creatures. And he turns after slicing them in half, he turns them around their faces so they can kiss, and he turns their genitalia around so they can unite. And he warns them, however, he says, if they become powerful again, I'm going to slice them another time, and they'll have to hop around on one leg. And what's beautiful here is, he talks about love as an attempt to address or respond to a constitutive wound in our nature, right? Humans by nature are wounded. Humans by nature are incomplete. And we are driven to love almost existentially as something that will fulfill us. And I think that's very interesting. I've written about this elsewhere because I think that this is, this is a notion of love that is should sound pretty familiar to us. It is dominant in Hollywood and in romantic comedies. And I've argued, because I think Plato is suggesting as much in his backhanded fashion, that this is a problematic account of love. It's a problematic idea that there is one partner out there for you, what we call a soulmate, as if there's someone out there who will complete you and solve all your problems. And that's a very big and demanding ideal to hold when it comes to love. I'm going to move on, though, in the interest of time. I need to talk about Socrates' speech. I'm moving over a couple of the others. I will say one word about Agathon, though, his speech, because he does raise an interesting point. He says that love is artistic and love is poetic. And why does he say these things? He says love is young. Love is artistic, poetic, and young because that's where we see it inspire art. We see love inspire poetry. And we see love inspire creativity in the young. And I was thinking of that quote from Shakespeare, "Love doth make poets of us all." I know when I was in love, I wrote awful poetry, which I will never share with anybody, except my wife. She gets to see it. But that's his argument there, that it inspires these kinds of things. But again, the backhanded critique is that it doesn't really do a very good job. Love itself is not the key to creativity. It does not teach skill. It just inspires passion. And that ties in with Plato's critique of art in the Republic, where in Book 10 of the Republic, for example, you saw that he doesn't understand what task art specifically does. Art is no task at all, really, in his view. Let me talk about Socrates' speech now. Socrates, he gives a dig at the other guys. He says in the preface, he says the difference in his speech is that it is going to be truthful. Theirs was not. And he immediately starts by questioning Agathon and says that, love desires what it is in need of. And so what does love need? What does it desire? What does it lack? It is beauty. So he puts this idea of an encomium on its head, where the men prior to him are praising love. Here he points out that love is a lack. Love is a want. Love is a need. Love is a pursuit. And then, we are already at third remove from reality, and now Socrates puts us further remove from reality, talking about the lesson that the priestess Diotima told him about love. Diotima tells Socrates about love's parentage, and she points out that he is the child of plenty and poverty. He is between the two. He's never complete, never completely without resources. He is never, nor is he ever rich. That's a quote. Love is never completely without resources, nor is he ever rich. Love is always desiring, never fulfilled. And he points out that one of the key byproducts of love is reproduction. And Diotima thinks this is very remarkable, very significant, because this suggests that love reflects a drive towards immortality. And I'm going to have to pause for a second because my daughter is... Sorry about that, everybody. So let's see here. Desire, love represents, because love involves reproduction, brutally speaking, or bluntly speaking, I should say, love represents a desire for immortality. That's what Diotima tells Socrates. But this desire for immortality, which we express through physical love and romantic love, can never be satisfied in loving a human being. Okay. This leads to a crucial passage here of the Symposium and of Socrates' speech called the ascent of love. That's what philosophers typically refer to this passage. And Diotima talks about love. In love, we start by loving one body. Then we progress to loving all bodies. And then from there, we love souls. This is line 210C, by the way, just so you can follow along where this is, 210B, 210C. We love souls. And then we love the beauty of laws and customs. And then we arrive at beauty itself. By the way, I didn't talk about this last week, but just so you know, to follow along with Plato, the line numbers are on the side of the text and they are universal. So I will never be referring to page numbers when it comes to Plato, but I'll be referring to line numbers. So again, the ascent of love takes place around 210, excuse me. So what is this ascent of love? We start by loving one person. Then we progress to love all bodies, he says, and then we love souls, and then we love laws, and then we love beauty itself. Well, this is a very curious thing, and I'll be honest with you, I've struggled with it for a long time to understand exactly what he's talking about, because I don't believe that I have passed the first step. And I think Plato's point is that the vast majority of people don't pass the first step. This, when he talks about progressing from loving one body to loving all bodies, I kind of am reminded of what the Buddhists talk about as compassion. A love that is no longer particular, but loves all things. Now, maybe many humans are able to, partake in that kind of love. Then love of souls, well, this is the essence of people in Plato's view. And so we are loving beyond their physical being. We come to love what is eternal in them. And then why laws next? Well, because laws shape souls. So what we're doing here is this is a progression to greater abstraction until we arrive at the form of beauty itself. Now, this is weird because who knows what beauty looks like? As we're going to see in Kant, who you read next, it's hard to imagine beauty on its own. Beauty is always instantiated. It's always in things. What is a form of beauty itself? Who knows? This is why I said to you that Plato's theory of the forms, while important, is difficult. And as soon as it was created, it gave rise to philosophical debate and argument and confusion. But the point is that love can set us on a trajectory until we, this is basically the trajectory of philosophy itself, where we will rise and arrive at the realm of the forms. And the goal in this case would be to achieve the forms, and in this case, the form of beauty. So what's interesting here is that love and philosophy are intertwined and deeply related, and it's really hard to pull them apart. What he has in mind becomes very is explained in the last speech, which is the speech of Alcibiades. So Alcibiades he was a general. He was a well-known military figure. And he has a hilarious entrance here. He is completely drunk and stumbles into the party with his own drinking party and sees Socrates there and swoons and points out that he has been pursuing Socrates for so long. What's remarkable here is that Socrates is older. And so Alcibiades has put on its head what I related to earlier is the traditional lover-beloved relationship as the Greeks would have seen it, right? That would have been the older man pursuing the younger man, and the younger man being the beloved. Here, Socrates, the older man, is the beloved, and the younger man, Alcibiades, is the pursuer. So that's something to keep in mind. He says that Socrates he says that he talks about his attempt to woo Socrates, and it's pretty hilarious. Um, you know, he tries to seduce him. They stay up late talking. They go wrestle in the gymnasium, which they would have done naked. Just throwing that out there. Oiled up, no less. They have a dinner, and they stay up late drinking. And Socrates just talks, just philosophizes, and he can't be pressed to, succumb to the passion of Alcibiades, at which point Alcibiades becomes kind of desperate and says, Socrates, I will give you everything I have if you love me. And Socrates replies basically by saying, you have nothing to offer me. What you're offering me is not what I want. What does this mean? Well, I think if we relate this to the story of Diotima, which we just saw, the lesson or the point is the physical love is which Alcibiades is offering, and which is human instinct to offer. That means nothing for a philosopher, or that means nothing philosophically, or that's not the real gift or goal. Socrates wants more because he feels he's offering more. What is he offering Alcibiades? Well, Alcibiades tells us that he often feels that Socrates makes him feel ashamed. This is the key point in that story. Shame is a moral emotion. It suggests that you know what the right thing is, but you don't do it. Shame is a very important emotion that comes up over and over in Plato's dialogues. The people that Socrates is talking with and whose moral corruption he always exposes, they always say to him, well, you make me feel ashamed. As if to say, I know the right thing to do, but I am tempted otherwise. What does this mean? This means that Alcibiades has started to love Socrates in the right way. Socrates is offering him a moral lesson. He is teaching him that there is more to life and pleasure and happiness there's more to life and happiness than physical pleasure. Alcibiades has gotten a hint of that, and so he's drawn to him, but he struggles with his instinct to revert to physical passion. So again, that was my point of saying that, the story of Alcibiades illustrates what's going on in the speech of Diotima, which is to say that philosophy itself is the process by which we graduate from physical love and romantic love to something more, which is incipient in physical and romantic love, but needs to be released, if you will. There is an impulse for immortality that is driving through romantic love, but can not be achieved in physical means or romantic means. It has to be achieved in intellectual means when our minds are in tune with the realm of the forms. And that is something that philosophy, and that's something that Socrates can do. Good. That's all I want to say about the symposium. I look forward to any questions or comments you may have if you wish to talk about it further. Thank you. Bye.